Hello, and welcome to this live stream. Tonight, I want to talk to you about the coming Cancer full moon lunar eclipse, which is tomorrow, January 10th. I'm not really going to be going into the astrology, but I want to do a quick oracle reading to talk about the energy that's coming in at this time so that we as a collective can be best prepared for this energy and how to make the most out of it. So, really quickly, I want to tell you about who I am. I'm Dominique D. Wilson, the founder of RohiniWellness.com. I'm also the host of the Yes to You podcast and the facilitator of a really cool online group called the Sacred Beauty Sisterhood. And this is really just a group where women come together to encourage and support one another. And that is actually on Facebook. So, enough about me. I want to hop into tonight's reading because I think it came right on time. This is a reading that I actually was doing for myself, but kind of thinking about the collective. And this reading came up yesterday and it was so powerful. I just had to share this. So, it was kind of late and I didn't want to pop on here too late last night, so I thought I'd do it today. But before I hop into the reading, the topic of today is really going to be about letting go of what no longer serves us. I think as a collective, a lot of us are going through this process in one way or another, be that letting go of a person, a circumstance, an idea, maybe a belief system, a group that you've been associated with that either you've outgrown or just for one reason or another is no longer serving you. Now, I want to start by talking about some of the challenges of, first of all, why do we stay in situations that don't work for us? And I have four reasons for that. So, one of the reasons why we stay in situations that don't work for us is that we catastrophize, right? We catastrophize by saying, well, if I walk through that door, then what if X happens? Or what if this happens? Or I might lose out on this, right? And so you might find yourself kind of at the doorway, not really sure whether to proceed forward, not really sure if you should stay, but a part of you knows that you kind of have to move forward because the situation you're in, the relationship, this job that you have or what have you has spent its time in your life and that's it. There's no more you can get out of it without depleting yourself. So when it comes to catastrophizing, we say, well, if I do this, then blank will happen. And I want to tell you a quick story. This happened to me several years ago. I was a flight attendant, and a few weeks into our training, someone asked a question. They said, "Well, this is going to be a stupid question, but blah blah blah." And our instructor said, "You know what? There's no such thing as a stupid question. However, if your question begins with what if, don't even go there." And the reason she said that, it always stuck with me, is because when you say what if, you can literally imagine a billion and one things that might hold you back from moving forward. Hey there, I see someone has joined me live. Make sure you drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. So you can come up with so many different scenarios for why things may not work out. And this can really hold you back from being able to move forward. So if you ever find yourself catastrophizing, I really invite you to just go ahead and hash it out on paper. What's the worst thing that could happen? Maybe there are several things that could happen, right? What is the worst thing that could happen if you were to move forward, let this person go, walk away from that situation, right? And then I want you to write down what's the worst thing that could happen if you stay. And then I want you to write down what's the best thing that could happen if you were to move forward in the direction that you feel called. And again, what's the best thing that could happen if you stay? And of course, the best thing that could happen has already happened, most likely, because if it hadn't, you wouldn't be watching this video, right? So that's just an exercise. And once you finish that process of just hashing it out on paper, weigh out the pros and cons. Is it better to stay on the hamster wheel or to leap forward on faith and move into your new direction, your calling, whatever it is? And once you come to that realization, just make a choice, At sometimes in life you just got to go with your gut, make that choice and don't look back. So that's the first reason why we stay in situations that we've outgrown, catastrophizing. The second reason is shame and guilt. And if this is resonating with you, feel free to drop a comment. Have you ever struggled with a situation that was really difficult to let go of because of all these different reasons, and maybe sat in that situation for weeks, months, or even years? And then if you have been through that, what was it or what is it that's making the change so difficult? So please drop a comment. And by the way, if anyone else comments something that you can relate to, be sure to just say, hey, you know what, I get it, I've been there, because we all want to remind each other that we're in this together and you are not alone. We all go through stuff. So back to the reasons why we stay. The second reason was shame and guilt, right? We might feel, well, I should stay with this person because they need me. Or I should put in more effort because when I was down, they were there for me. Or they can't do for themselves and they really need me right now and I have the resources, so I should help them. Should. This shame and guilt, right? Feeling guilty about walking away from something, about bettering yourself, because maybe the thing you're walking away from or the person you're walking away from doesn't appear to have, everything that you have. And the reason that I wanted to bring this one up is because shame and guilt gets rooted into our conscience from a very young age, right? I mean, we can go through all kinds of experiences in life that make us feel guilt and make us feel ashamed, but usually shame and guilt is those are those core, deeply rooted things that it can take some time to work through. But the more you recognize that shame and or guilt might be behind some of the decisions you're making, the more empowered you'll be so that you can reframe and turn those things around. Another one might be, I haven't worked hard enough, I haven't put enough into this situation. Or maybe you have put so much in. For me in particular, I was in a marriage for a very long time, in the relationship for 10 years, but in the marriage was towards the latter half. And I mean, gosh, when it came time to leave, the relationship was not healthy. It was toxic. We were not good for each other. And both of us were going in two complete directions, but we kept holding on to the thing, and I felt like, well, I've invested all this time. We've invested all this time. We should be trying to work things out, blah, 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 blah. And there was all this guilt around walking away from something. There was also shame because I felt like walking away from my marriage was some sort of failure, right? And though carrying those emotions like that, not even realizing that that was at the root of it, really took a toll on both of us. It was a very painful process. But thank God we did go through with a divorce, and both of us are now much better off for it. So I want to share with you a couple things you can hash out in your journal if you're dealing with some shame or guilt around letting go of a situation, walking away from something that isn't serving you. And the first thing is to write out, what is it that you feel that you owe to these people? Is it your time that you owe? Is it your presence that you owe? Do you feel like you just need to be there to hold space? Is it your money, your resources, or just your energy, right? You're thinking about this person, constantly concerned about how they are, how they're doing, or the organization that you were once a part of. What do you feel you owe them, and why do you feel that way? Just be completely honest with yourself about that. And then the next thing is, how long have you been feeling like that? How long have you felt like, I need to be of service to these people, or I need to be of service to this person, or I need to be of service to this group? And where did that come from? Were you told from a young age that you were selfish, that you use up all your time and resources for yourself? You need to help other people. Were you made to feel that way based on a religious or spiritual belief, or maybe some organization you were part of? Where did those thoughts come from? Is that your stuff, or is that someone else's stuff that's now clouding your ability to make your own decisions? The next thing to hash out when it comes to shame and guilt is, what would your life be like if you didn't owe anybody a damn thing? Like, if you didn't owe anybody your time, if you didn't owe anybody your resources, if you didn't have to do anything to prove that you are a good person and that you have value and you have worth, if that was already on the table, what would life be like? And then I want you to write down what are some other ways that you might already be paying it forward, or maybe you've already paid it forward, or maybe some things that you could do to pay it forward. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of times with shame and guilt, we put ourselves in situations to pay off this kind of like invisible debt, right? We may not be able to identify what the debt is, but it's kind of like you're paying it forward to build some good karma for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. It becomes a problem when it starts draining you. So maybe you can volunteer at an organization in your community, or for one of the hotlines for people that call in crisis if you've been through a situation like that. Maybe it's just a matter of doing a kind gesture, folding your spouse's clothes instead of throwing them on the the chair somewhere, or doing something, picking up the phone to call someone and just say, "Hey, I was just calling to see how was your day." An act of kindness can go a long way. It doesn't have to be some massive philanthropic, avalanche of goodwill that goes out. Whatever good you put into the world is valuable, and it's enough. So, if you're dealing with shame and guilt around walking away from something, leaving someone behind, these are just some things that you can do. So we talked about catastrophizing, right? Making the worst out of what could possibly happen if you move forward. We talked about dealing with shame and guilt. The next thing I want to talk about is trauma. Trauma is definitely a real thing. And really, trauma is when you are in a situation that is so stressful that it supersedes your ability to cope in the moment. So, of course, that can look like different things to different people. Trauma can show up in a million different shades. It just depends on the person. And all of us deal with trauma to one extent or another. I want to also aside here, if you are in an abusive situation, whether that be physically, mentally, sexually, emotionally, or physically, I think I already said physically. Anyway, get out. And if it's not safe for you to get out in the moment, make sure you get some support. You can send me a private message and I will help you to pull together some resources, but make a safety plan to make sure that you get out. So, going back to trauma, right? If you are in a situation that is causing you ongoing trauma, or you've been through something that really took a blow to your ability to feel safe and secure in the world, then it's very important to work through trauma. You've got to connect your mind back down into your body, because trauma puts us in our head in a perpetual state of fight or flight, right? We're always kind of on guard because, like if you take enough blows, you learn to put your hands up first. But the problem is you tend to block people out that way. It blocks you from advancing, going for opportunities. It can really cause a lot of re-traumatization in your relationships because you end up playing out old patterns that just don't work. And so, if you're dealing with trauma, the best way to get out of your head is to get into your body. And you can do that, number one, through sensuality. Sensuality is really just being in touch with your five senses. Look at beautiful images, right? Don't watch things that make you want to cringe, like the bad news that comes on every morning, right? Like, of course, you want to be aware of what's going on in the world, but the local news just may not be the place to get that, right? Or movies, make sure that you're watching things that inspire you and uplift you and make you feel centered, right? And make you feel joy. You want to make sure that you're listening to things that uplift and inspire you. Is there a podcast or a certain vlogger or music, whatever? Make sure you're going out in nature, listening to the sound of the birds if that's your thing. Again, on the flip side of that, gossip, bad news, complainers, people that are constantly um, believing that they are victims and not looking for ways to get themselves out of it. Listening to all of that stuff is just going to bring you down. So making sure that you're feeding your ears and you're listening with things that uplift and inspire you. Okay, so that's seeing, listening, um, tasting. Be mindful when you eat, like take a moment to just really taste your food, or find one food item that you really like and just indulge. This gets you in touch with your sense of taste and experiencing pleasure through your sense of taste. Touch, touch is a big one when it comes to trauma. So you can start with small things. Find a warm blanket to curl up under. You can also do things like going to get a massage if you feel comfortable with that. Finding safe forms of touch for yourself and touch along with others. And then finally, Smell, use aromatherapy, essential oils. So these are just some ways that you can get in touch with your physical body. And what this does is it helps you to bring more pleasure in. And the more pleasure you experience, the more you're able to separate those feelings of pain. Because what happens is when we go through trauma, it shuts down our body because trauma is stored in the tissues. So this brings me into the next form of healing trauma, which is through movement. In particular, yoga is really good for this because yoga stretches and oxygenates the blood. It helps to bring oxygen-rich blood to those tissues. Maybe if you have a lot of tension stored, I know as women, we tend to store a lot of trauma like tension around our hips. So doing hip openers can really help with that. So attend a local yoga class. And obviously it may not be this massive transformation on the first day, but just keep at it 10 minutes a day here and there to start moving. And the other form of movement that I found really healing is ecstatic dance. You can find an ecstatic dance class. Be sure to Google ecstatic dance if you've never heard of it. Or you can do it yourself. It's really simple. You put on music and just dance. So at a time where no one's home, put on some music in your headphones or whatever and just dance for 20 minutes or so. There's something about dance that awakens something in you. There have been times where I've danced and cried. I've stopped to just like embrace myself in a hug. And I'm like, why in the heck am I standing here hugging myself? But there's something about the body. It speaks to you when you move it. So the third way to deal with trauma is to go to a trauma-informed therapist. And I say trauma-informed because not all therapists are for all people. Sometimes you go to the wrong therapist, they'll say something to trigger you with this kind of tough love approach, and it can turn out really bad. So make sure that you grill your therapist, interview them, tell them you want a 15 to 30-minute consultation before you hire them. Just as if you were looking for someone to fill a job position, interview them and find out how do they work with your energy and what is their experience with trauma. This is also going to help you. So these three things, if you combine them, are really powerful. Not every traumatic emotion can be talked through. You can't intellectualize everything. Some things, like I said, they're in the body. And so they only come out through movement. You'll be surprised. You start moving and then you'll know what you need to talk about the next time you go into a session with your therapist. So try that out. So that was the third thing. Trauma, one of the things that can hold us back from walking away from a situation that is not serving us. And if you're finding this valuable, please let me know in the comments. And the fourth reason why we stay in situations that don't serve us is self-doubt, right? AKA imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is when we feel like, who am I to step up into this new phase of me? Who am I to raise my prices when all my clients expect me to charge this rate that I've been charging? But then, you know that your life is moving forward. Things are more expensive. You're up leveling. You need to pull in more money. You're offering more value. So it makes sense to raise your prices. But imposter syndrome is, well, who am I to think that I deserve this promotion that I'm getting? You see, and so sometimes imposter syndrome can be in hindsight, we already get the money or we get the promotion, and then we're sitting there beating ourselves up over it. Or it can work the other way where it prevents you from even accepting the opportunity. You might just say, you know what, just forget it. I'm just going to charge $50 for this coaching session when I know I should be charging 100. Right. And so we shortchange ourselves or say no to opportunities. Then we beat ourselves up for that because we know we should have just gone for it. So if you're dealing with imposter syndrome, I invite you to do a little bit of reframing around the beliefs that are behind that. The way that you do reframing is to look at something like, let's say that you are in a situation, in a relationship that you don't want to be in anymore, but something's keeping you stuck there. Let's say that you're thinking, well, if I leave this person, who else is gonna want me? Like I'm 40 years old, like I have kids, I've got this, that, blah, blah, blah. So let's say that this is the belief, right? Well, perhaps you can reframe that into something you're telling yourself that's not necessarily true. Is it possible that maybe you're holding a belief that once you reach a certain age, your value decreases. Maybe you see other people that way. Maybe there's a judgment that you might be holding about other people in that situation. And so you don't want to identify with that judgment. And so when it comes to money, let's say, maybe you say, well, these people would never pay me that much money for these services, right? Perhaps you would never invest that amount if it were you hiring a coach. So the way to fix that is to embody the thing that you know you need to become, because this is about growth. So, for instance, when it comes to, let's say, coaching, invest in coaching for yourself. If you're willing to pay $300 an hour for a coaching session or $100 or whatever it is, then it's not going to be awkward for you to charge that from a client because you've normalized that. It's not some out of the ordinary concept to bring in more money. It's just what people do, right? And so if you've done it yourself, if you've demonstrated that for yourself, then you'll raise your standards for people to pay you what you feel your services are worth in that moment. So that's just one example of that. Also, when it comes to the relationship one, if you feel like, well, who could possibly want me at this stage in my life, or I don't have this going on or that going on? Well, what you do is you become your ideal partner. So imagine your ideal partner. How do they talk to you? What kind of dates do you guys go on? How do you dress up when you know you're going to see them? Start doing that stuff for yourself. Start buying yourself flowers. Take yourself out on dates. Look in the mirror and be like, damn, you fine. I'm serious. It sounds really narcissistic, but it works. Your confidence will start to go up, and the people you interact with will see you with a new light. They'll start to respect you, and you'll be like, wow, okay. And so this is something that I think is it's a big secret. You can call it the law of attraction, if you will, but you start becoming the thing that you want to manifest in your life. And it's like you become a magnet and it just starts happening for you. If you want to up level your income, right? Start hanging out around people that make money. Go to a hotel bar with your laptop and do your work instead of sitting in your living room. And that's pretty much like all you have to do is order some coffee or water or whatever. I mean, you don't have to break the bank to step your game up, but go ahead and step into next level you. Give yourself permission to do what you can now. Dress up for yourself, not because you're going to see someone or go out that day. Even if you're going to stay home all day, dress your best because you are the one you're trying to impress. And when you can do that, that's going to shift that mindset. It's going to raise your standards and you won't put up with anybody else's crap and you won't feel bad about walking away from something that's draining you. So I'm going to check my notes here because I want to make sure I covered everything. The last thing I want to say about reframing, right? Because we talked about catastrophizing, which is the first reason why we stay in situations that aren't good for us. We talked about shame and guilt. We talked about trauma, and we talked about imposter syndrome. For shame and guilt, if you happen to be feeling shameful about something, it's very important to also reframe those beliefs. For instance, if you say, I should stay with this person because they really need me, they're going through a hard time, whatever, but you realize you're drained, you're starting to feel depressed, and it's causing a problem for you. Could it be that you're not staying because that person needs you? Maybe you feel in some way that you need them. So you might reframe that for saying, I'm staying with this person because they need me to I don't want people to leave me. I don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be let down. Instead of saying, well, I'm here because I don't want to let them down. So it's really interesting when you flip these things around. It gives you a lot of insight into why you're doing something. And if you can identify that you might be trying to meet one of your emotional needs, but in this unhealthy way, you're now empowered to switch up your approach and meet that emotional need in a way that works for you. So, the best time to make a change in your life is now because there's no other time that's guaranteed to you. And if you're waiting for everything to be perfect, if you're waiting to have that moment where you just feel super confident and you're like, yeah, I'm ready today, I'm going to do the thing, who knows when that day is going to come, right? So sometimes you just have to Trust your gut, know what's right for you, see the signs, look for those confirmations, and step out on faith. And know that no matter what direction you move in, you are competent and capable. You will pull together the resources you need to make it work out. So why stay? So now I want to hop into this reading. Last night I did a reading and it was kind of late. And so I didn't want to share it last night because I was a little burnt out myself. So I want to share today um, this reading for the Cancer full moon eclipse. And the funny thing is, I designed this little talk before I even pulled this spread. And the spread actually, it just like it confirms everything that we've been talking about. So the first card that I pulled is kind of just, I was asking what is needed right now at this time. And this is the card I got, which is deep replenishment. I'm going to try and, it's kind of blurry. Okay, at the bottom it says retreat, rest, be held. And I love this because it's almost like the wind is blowing. Her hair is kind of blowing in the wind, and she's got like a floral bouquet here, and pieces of the flowers are blowing off in the wind. And ironically, this almost looks like an eclipsed full moon here, right? So this card here tells me that what is important to do in this moment is to rest and replenish. It reminds me of when I was giving birth to, well, both of my sons. Right before the pushing phase, there's this phase in the birthing process called transition. And so it's like you've already dilated to the point of 10 centimeters or whatever. And you're right between being dilated and pushing. And there's this part where you just kind of rest. And for me, I fell into a very deep sleep for all of, I don't know, 3 minutes. And then came this huge contraction. It was like, boom, it was time to push. So it makes me think of that with this full moon. We are gearing up for something huge. Imagine giving birth to a new life. That's not something small. That's a big deal. I don't know who's watching, but if you've ever had a child, you understand that that's a really big deal. And we're all kind of going through this birthing phase. It's not quite here yet, but whatever it is that you're about to give birth to, you're going to need all your strength and your energy to power through, because you are bringing new life into the world through your gifts, your voice, your talent, through your presence. And so take this time over the weekend, I'll say the next 5 days, to just replenish. Think about what it is that you need at this time to feel nurtured. And how can you allow yourself to be nurtured by others? Isn't that wonderful if there's someone else in your life that's trying to do for you? Don't say, oh, no, thanks, I got it. Say, oh, yes, thank you. I'll take the help, you know? And if there's no one else there, do this for yourself. Give yourself what you need. And go back through this video, work through those journal questions, because that's going to help you to identify what some of those needs are. The next question I asked is, what is the influence right now to help us with this? And I got this here. Keepers of the light, or not of the light, keepers of the earth. So there's like these ancestors here. And look at the middle of the card. Another full moon, right? It says, you are not alone. Ancient ancestors stand beside you. And whether or not you believe in ancestors, to me, this card is a representation that the cosmic energies are supporting you right now. This is a very divine feminine energy supporting you. So don't be afraid to make this decision to cut ties with this person, to leave this situation that is no longer serving you. Don't be afraid of what's on the other side of that door, because this energy is like, we got you. You will be fine. And this also makes me think of the family line. Cancer is about the mother, right? And your mother's mother, and your mother's mother's mother, your great great grandmother. The matrilineal line. And so, is it possible that through your work, through your expression on this planet, you are healing your family line? You might be the ripple in the pond that changes things up. If you are the one saying, No more living based on society standards. I'm not going to play these toxic relationship mind games anymore. I'm not going to go to a job that I hate every day that makes me feel like completely drained just because it's what I should be doing. You are the one who's here to break the cycle, and you have all of this energy supporting you in that process. I just thought this was a beautiful message. So that's the influence that's coming in. Now, at the heart of the matter, the card that I pulled for that is the crumbling. Okay. So look at this tower here. Look at the lightning. And look at that beam of light coming down from a clear sky. Okay. And then inside, beyond these towers, this beautiful, lush paradise. And the path here is just, there's roses, right? But this part here looks so morbid. If you're familiar with the tarot, it reminds me of the Tower card. And there's bricks here coming down. So this is this Capricorn energy, right? That is opposite from the full moon. This is a breaking down of old structures, walking away from what's not serving you. I told you this card here sums up the whole point of this video. We are breaking out of old, worn out, outdated habit patterns and structures, relationships, scenarios, ideas, belief systems that just don't work, things have that you feel have taken your power, all the power struggles, that's all going away. And this clarity here coming through, it's interesting. There's lightning around the side tearing this down, but what's actually coming down here is a beam of light from a clear sky. This is divine inspiration, seeding new life into the place that you're going into. So, again, have no fear because this is where you're going. Okay. And the cosmic energy wants you to know that. But you won't if you keep trying to stay over here getting hit in the head with all these bricks that are falling down. So that's what's at the heart of this energy here. The next card I got is our short-term outcome. Okay. And it's transformation. Look at that. Okay. Now behind her head, it could be the sun, could be a full moon, but look in her hand, that strand of DNA there. Okay. Just being transformed all the way down to the cellular level. And it says here, things are changing at a cellular level, deep healing. So this is a time of deep healing. It makes sense with this watery Cancer moon, right? Going deep like the oceans, healing out patterns that you might feel like you've been struggling with, these emotions, these hangups, this trauma since you were a little kid. You might feel like you came into this life with that. Well, that's all being healed now. These structures are coming down, okay? So that we can have this transformation. So, yeah, growing pains are a real thing, but keep the faith because there's a beautiful destination ahead for you. If you flow with where your heart is telling you to go. You got to listen to what you know is right for you, no matter what is happening in your life right now. The only person who can tell you what is the best next step for you is you. And the final card is our long-term outcome. And look at that. Another full moon there. Okay. You see those cords being broken, unbound. We are breaking free. Okay. It says releasing soul patterns, contracts, and past lives. Okay. Just look at that. Long term, just breaking free. I don't know who these people are, but it doesn't matter. The people in your community, the collective, those who are listening to what their heart is saying and following their gut. Yeah, it's going to be a hard time going through that tower moment, the crumbling. And I'm not sure how long that those rumblings might be there. But ultimately, it's worth it because there's nothing more valuable to a human being than freedom. It is the number one value that each and every one of us share. So I invite you to replenish yourself, relax, take good care of yourself. That concludes the reading. And I also want to invite you to Join my group if you are looking for sisterhood and support. We are a group of women from all walks of life, different healers, and everyone's into something different, but we come together, we laugh, we share, we learn things. The group is all about personal growth. It's free. It's on Facebook called the Sacred Beauty Sisterhood. I'll pop a link in the description of this video. Also, if you haven't already outlined a vision for your life, I'm not talking just goals, I'm talking about an overall vision. If you could imagine a perfect day in your ideal life, what would that be in terms of your lifestyle, health, relationships, finances, personal growth? Yada, yada, yada. I have a free resource. It's a 3-page pleasure map that will help you to tap into your desires in each of those specific areas so that you can work on the process of creating a vision. The whole point of it is to close the gap between where you are now and where it is that you want to be. So you can find that at bit.ly/my pleasure map. Again, I will drop a link to that in the description of this video. I hope you've enjoyed this. Be sure to leave me a comment and let me know what your thoughts are. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, take good care of yourself and I will catch you soon. I see a question here. Let me move this out of the way. Do I have books? I actually do have 2 books. One of them is kind of off topic. It's about how to start your business on social media. The other one is called the Create Your Vision Workbook, and it's actually a fully expanded version of that free pleasure map I was just telling you about. The Create Your Vision Workbook will walk you through 4 steps to create a vision for your inspired life. And it's going to help you, again, to create vision in each of those 8 major life areas. Then you're going to look at, how satisfied are you with where you are now? And then what is it that you need to do to start moving the needle forward so that holistically your life comes together in the way you want it to? So you can find that at rohiniwellness.com/vision. I'll type that in the comments here. And I actually just published that on January 1st. So you can find that on Amazon. And with this workbook, I highly recommend you get the paperback version so you can print it out, or not print it out, so you can actually work through the book. But it's also available on Kindle if you'd rather have it that way. Okay, I'm terrible at talking and typing. Here we go. So there's the link. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this live stream. I so appreciate you. And I wish you all a very peaceful weekend and a blessed full moon. Take care.